Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live stream. Slight difference tonight. Adrian and I have both been having a mad day, and we both got back in about an hour ago, so it's been a bit of a dash. So apologies if you didn't see the post and you're having to find it now. Instead of having a scheduled post, we're just gone straight to live. So we'll do a little bit of a preamble to let you hopefully find us, and I will do my best to drop this into the top of the page for Lightland viewers. But Adrian, good evening, first of all.
Yeah, good evening, Sam. How are you?
Good.
Hence.
Well, I've been doing a workshop today for Lightland, a hidden Dorset workshop, and I'm just delighted because it didn't rain, because we had a big showing of rain, but it didn't come, so we had a really nice time. But it's been a rather long day, a fun day, but a rather long day. So I'm hoping you're going to do the majority of the hard work there, Adrian, which kind of happens every week, to be honest.
Well, yeah, we'll see. If I find anything difficult, I'll just throw it your way, okay?
That's fine. I'll try and pay attention. I've got tea and chocolate. I'm feeling pretty good. Nothing
Good.
could go wrong. So
Yeah.
this is one of our creative. He's gone for the strong stuff. This is one of our
Mm.
creative interpretation sessions. Thank you very much for everyone that sent in raw
Yeah.
files. We had a bit
Mm.
of a backlog from last time, and we've got some extras from in between. And a load of you sent us some today, which I haven't had a chance to dig out for the reasons aforementioned. So we will keep those for the next one of these that we do. And if you haven't seen this before, or if you want a little reminder, Adrian and I pick out some of your images. We can't do them all, I'm afraid, but we pick out selected ones where we think we might be able to just have an interesting conversation about how he may take it, how I may take it. And obviously throughout that, there'll be the odd thing that crops up, which we know people stumble across technique wise or whatever it may be. And it's supposed to be, Adrian, isn't it? A very kind of free flowing, creative way. We're not talking about rights and wrongs.
No, definitely not. No. And, we've had an interesting day today, each of us, and that will doubtless take us in a particular direction. So, yeah, and that's real, isn't it? That's what happens. You get back, you play with the images, and maybe things don't go the way you might take them the day after or whatever. But okay, so we'll see where we get to today.
We'll see where we get to. And I'm just double checking the stream because I know there is a bit of confusion there. So I'm hoping you guys will have found us. And what I'm going to do, Adrian, while I have a bit of a fiddle on that, do you want to just share the screen and we'll pick out a first image and I'll double check everything's running okay in the background?
Okay, all right. So let's just head to get that out of the way. Can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we have, as you mentioned, a series of pictures that we're going to grab and maybe a little bit on the fly and see how they go, see where we go with them. I'm going to start with this one in the top left-hand corner. This was one that came in the last session. We didn't have time to have a look at this one, so we're going to have a quick look at this one. So this is so this is a Olympus raw file that's come in, and it's classic sort of snow situation. But as soon as I saw this, that one thing I guess that's worth pointing out, isn't it? So the background, the editing background, is probably particularly relevant for snow images. When we're working with editing, typically we keep the background white because that's our reference to maximum white in the image, and that helps us to make sure our snow comes out white when we print it, or if we send it to the internet or whatever. The temptation is to have a black background, which gives you the kind of maximum contrast and impact on screen, but the reality is you can quite quickly lose your way with snow. In this case, this one has started out really well. So if this is the raw file, then the person that's exposed this image has done a great job, because the camera would normally try and turn this down and make the white snow grey. And possibly the balance of tones in this image has helped that to sort of maintain the highlights. But I suspect that the person that's taking the shot has compensated or wound up the histogram to make sure the snow's come out white. So that's really good. What's not so good is the trees. It's pretty clear that those trees will have got some strong lighting on it, and they're not really showing their best, I think. So I think when we're looking at this image, looking at editing this image, it's that I'm drawn to. There's more there, and I think when the person was there, they would have noticed the trees sparkling in the light. I'm pretty sure that what they would have seen, even if it's not been captured here. Just looking at the frame as well, it looks like a little bit of flare going on in the top there. That can be tricky to get rid of sometimes, that sort of green splodge that we can see at the top, and a little purple fringing around there as well. So there's a little bit of that, but nothing disastrous, and we can always manage that in post-processing. So I guess looking at the histogram, you know, it's well exposed right to the right here. We've got a peak there just below maximum, so that's really good. So let's have a look and see what we might do with it. Now, one possibility is to try and bring out a little bit more detail in the white snow. If there's textural stuff there, we could have a go at that. The danger is, of course, that we'll take it away from white if we separate out these tones. So at the moment, there's one big spike, which means all of the tones, if you like, are very, very similar. So they're all grouped together, similar brightness, which means there's no discernible detail. If we are able to spread those out a little bit, we'll get a little bit of detail appearing here. We may not want that. We may just want a neutral carpet in front of these trees, but I'm just going to see if we can separate out the tones and see if that helps at all. So by pulling the highlights back, you'll see that this spreads the histogram out, and that starts to reveal some detail. And actually there's some shadows running across here. That's quite interesting. So we might go with that. I'm just going to leave that in there for now. And then take a look at these trees. I think they need to be lifted. So I'm just going to, very crudely, because we're on a bit of a mission today anyway, just going to really touch the whites here. Now I'm picking up whites on purpose, because if I just went for exposure, I'd end up pulling up the blue in the background here, which is dark, but pulling the whites out or the highlights out will restrict where the light's coming from. So I can do that much more aggressively without seeing an impact on the darker elements of the image. Also the tree themselves, the contrast of the tree against the backlit leaves and so on actually might mean I might look at pulling a little bit of the blacks down, but for now I'm going to leave that where they are. Let's just pull up the whites a little bit more. Now we can see we're damaging the snow in the foreground, but we can come back in and pick up the foreground if we need to. In fact, actually, that didn't seem to, yeah, okay, so we got away with that. So I think that was a bit of processing. So that's just generally brought up the trees a little bit, and then I think I might just look at the patches of mist that are coming through here, condensation that's coming through here, and just lift those a little bit as well. Now, whether I do that in this way, doing it with a few sort of localized adjustments, or whether I should do that with something more carefully with a brush or something like that. But I think just for the moment, I'll just focus on it using a little bit of radial adjustments. Looks like I could do a few more here. Okay, so yeah, I think that's just giving them a little bit more of a spark and just bringing out the backlit nature of those leaves. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, so could probably do with more. I think we can definitely bring more light to this. And then it's a question of whether that white point is where you want it to be. It's looking a little creamy. But I say that's whether or not you want to see detail there or not. If you don't want to see the detail, then pulling that back a little bit can keep it in the whites, and maybe just focus our attention just on this central section, which I might be able to do a little bit more. Now watch what happens if I pull up the exposure. It does have an impact on the blues behind, but it does give it more drama, so I think we might just be tempted to do that. Yeah, so that's heading in the right direction. We could have a look at the flare. There's quite a large chunk of flare here, so it's quite a big adjustment. Maybe take the greens out a little bit here. That might just help to reduce the flare. There's a purple fringe around here as well. Or generally, we might perhaps consider putting a gradient just over there and darken that down, and maybe at the same time, that's sort of acting as a bit of a vignette. That might be a nice thing to do. In fact, even possibly a little bit of a vignette anyway might just bring the attention more to the image. So before and after. Okay, so Obviously, we're guessing how that might have been on the day, but I'm guessing those trees probably looked really beautiful in the light, and just kind of lifting that. And then, yeah, maybe the shadows are you either interested in those or not, and if not, maybe you would return the white point so that this becomes a much brighter white and less distracting. Probably then finish up looking at some of these little bits in the snow, deciding whether they are important or not, and maybe dealing with those, or maybe not. If they're not too distracting, we could leave those there. But yeah, otherwise it's a really beautiful image, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Adrian. I know I went a bit quiet, but I was listening. I was juggling the stream a bit, but no, it's all good. Thank you for everyone that's joined us. And I think, yeah, it's always often trying to get the edit sometimes towards that reason that made you stop. And like you say, those trees, I'm sure catching the light would have been really, really appealing. I really appreciate everyone that has found us. It's slightly different this week for the reasons already mentioned, but a lot of you who I've seen before. So we've got East Sussex, County Down, Carmel, Liverpool, Milan. I mean, that sounds like a football match. Wimbledon, Ferndown, Chesterfield, and so on and so forth. So we do appreciate it. And like ever, drop us a like on the post and let us know in the comments where you are. Thank you very much, Adrian. I don't have anything to add there on that particular one, unless you do. But should we grab the next? Should we do a little swap and then I'll take one?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to take the next one.
Okay, so let's just grab this.
Oh, I need to stop share, don't I? There we go.
Yeah. Okay, let's just get this back then. It's all fun and games tonight, everybody. Okay, right. Let's share that then. Okay, so you guys should be seeing my screen now.
Yeah, you can see that.
Which is good. All right. And actually, Adrian, there's two shots that we think sort of work together, but I'm going to let you do the together bit after, if that's okay.
Yeah, fine.
So so it's this one and this one, but we'll let Adrian come to that. And actually, it became clear when we looked at it in a bit more detail. So I think there's a couple of things to say here. Obviously, we've got this person over here. So I imagine that was either a aspect ratio thing at the time, and they've brought the whole raw in, and or, as you're going to find out, they were perhaps thinking about stitching the two things together, and so they were just going to have extra data here on the left. So obviously you wouldn't compose it with that person in, and I'm sure they didn't intend to from that point of view. But I just wanted to actually treat this one as a single image if I could. And then we'll throw to Adrian, who is going to have a look at the two together, hopefully, if we can allow that processing wise. So I think if we were just dealing with this of its own, which we know may not have been the intention, obviously we need to, oh dear, kill my Lightroom again, Adrian. Sorry, mate.
Oh, no. Do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, go on. You have a grab of that while I sort that out in the background.
Okay. Yeah, so as we were just describing, these two are shot, actually, they're shot on a 14mm on a, I think it might be even a full frame camera. So this is super wide stuff. But they, as we looked at it, we suddenly thought, hang on a minute, is this a stitch? So we can have a quick look in. One of the nice things about Lightroom stitching is it's pretty quick. So you can go in and have a quick look and see how it looks. You've got several different ways of stitching these. My standard way of doing it would be cylindrical. That gives them more height, but this one didn't need the shape of it's rather peculiar because of the nature of the lens. But also, if you try to take panoramas with very wide aspect ratio lenses, you've got to watch out for the overlap, and there wasn't that much overlap between these two, so they've moved quite a long way, and the field of view of these lenses is enormous. But it does stitch, which is interesting, and surprisingly it actually stitches into perspective, which I was a bit shocked to see, but you can see how it does that. Nice thing in Lightroom is that you've got the ability to do two things actually. One is to fill the edges, and the other is to boundary warp. And boundary warp, it will warp and reshape the image to stretch out into these areas. And there's I guess there's some situations where that works and other situations where it looks ghastly. Fill edges is a bit more computationally heavy, and it goes in and works out the missing bits and creates the missing bits, which is rather lovely. Here we can see some of the plants arriving in the sky. But actually, it has done quite a good job of filling in some of these areas. You do see repetition and so on. And this is kind of the content-aware technology normally we have to head to Photoshop for. So which one of those two would be your preferred? I don't mind. But if we merge them and bring them in, then we can see one of the problems that we get is compression. So the image has been squashed in the aspect ratio has been changed. But we can fix that. We don't have to go to Photoshop to do that. We can do that within Lightroom. So we'll just wait for that to finish stitching. And then we'll see how it works. So yeah, typically doing panoramas with super wide angle lenses is not that straightforward. It doesn't always work, but here it is. Let's take that back into Lightroom. And then we can just crop out the UFOs in the sky and our man's tripod over there, and obviously some really weird stuff going on down here. So the aspect ratio stretching is particularly weird, and it's probably equally somewhat disturbing what's going on over there. So we'll just quickly get in there. So once you've put that together, then if you have a look at lens corrections, not lens correction, sorry, if you have a look at transform, then you can fix the aspect ratio. So those mountains needed to be taller, and so that allows us just to pull that aspect ratio back. So we can do that, and we may need to recrop it if we've lost too much of the sky. We can gain a bit more of the sky back. So we might be able to take it that way. How are you doing, Sam? Are you back on?
I am. Yes. Good old Lightroom. No, it's all good. Okay.
Give it back to you.
Yeah, let me grab that. Sorry, Adrian. Thank you for jumping in. All I wanted to do, and I've just done it while you've been talking, I just wanted to show a slightly different way of dealing with that single image, I suppose. And I'm not sure how much you guys will be able to see depending on the device you're watching on, but actually I've taken this in kind of a grainy black and white film, 35mm sort of vibe. A lot of these lovely darks and
lovely
hillocks, kind of really, I think, benefited from that. And this scratchiness all over the image, I don't know why, my brain just went there immediately. So we get so ISO obsessed, don't we? And I'm often out with people and they're really scared about moving it over like 200 or 400. And I just say, maybe sometimes pushing it right up can be a different creative choice. Okay, we could have done that at the time. And I suspect, as we know, they were stitching, but you can also bring that look in after the fact, even if you didn't shoot it in that way. And actually, I think it's quite a neat look with snow. I've done a bit of experimenting that with myself with film, but obviously it's much easier to do it on digital and then bring it in after. So all I really did was, bring some of that grain in, a little bit of a pump on the lights and the darks, and we still have our chap looking out to the mountains there, wistfully, no less.
Yeah. No, that's nice. And you're right about noise in digital cameras these days. I mean, I look back to my images I took with my 6-megapixel DSLR, and I tell you what, the noise on that was quite big. Now it's a lot smaller. So actually the noise is a different kind of noise than it used to be. The higher resolution cameras still produce noise, but the noise is so much finer grain. It's a different kind of noise now, I think, and it's maybe less in your face digital. So I think that, and particularly in black and whites, I think I'm much more accepting of noise in black and whites generally.
Yeah.
So do you have a particular setting you like on the grain section of Lightroom?
Not necessarily, but firstly, actually, I really agree about the black and white thing. It can really take it, can't we? We're used to seeing film images in grainy kind of look, and we quite like that. I tend to I don't have it too big, to be honest, the grain size. I tend to keep it quite low. So the trick is just to experiment a little bit with what works. But on these sorts of things, I think it needs to be fairly small, and maybe midway in roughness and midway in amount. But you can have a play. Okay. If we really pump that up, you can see that's even 100%. It's not crazy.
I must admit, I'm struggling to see it on the screen. It's not quite big enough, but yeah.
No.
And there's other software out there that does, I think, a more artistic job of grain. So if you like the grain stuff, then it might be you play with some of those other bits of software to add grain in a more creative way, I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Nice.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you had. There's a couple of things I wanted to just jump to, and then Adrian,
Yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah. Go for it.
And if my Lightroom conks out again, everyone, I'm super sorry. I need to put another 50p in the back of the Mac.
Yeah.
Actually, what I should say, oh, well, John says embrace the noise. You're absolutely right, John. ISO noise. If you guys have any questions, do try and hit them. I am keeping my eye on that mid Lightroom crashes, and we will happily try and obviously answer those. So actually, this one, Adrian, if we can.
Yeah. Go. I'd like to have a tweak at that as well. If you've already got something in mind.
Well, very simple,
Go for
and
it.
it's a really beautiful image. Actually, obviously, there's some
I
ICM going
totally
on.
agree. Yeah, I loved it too.
Yeah, we both digged it. And I think actually, and then I'm going to throw it to you. You can maybe go a little bit more sideways on it, but for me, and I know everybody just thinks I just crop everything. I think what it is I've been living in 5x4 a lot recently,
Mm-hmm.
and I just think that just tightens it up a little bit for me with this slightly off center in that kind of vibe. And I would definitely take it black and white. And again, I don't want to steal where you're going, and it's going to be a little bit like what I did on the other one. In that I actually think, oh, no, I'm going to be careful of that. I actually think it feels to me, I look like a one-trick pony here, but this could take a bit more roughness and.
Let's put some grain in there.
Yeah, it's my go-to.
Yep. Is there a triangle slider?
Naughty boy.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's lots more you could do, and it'd be interesting to see where you go with that, Adrian. But I think I saw this in a very filmic way, despite the fact the technique might be something we're all used to seeing a bit more of now. But I don't know whether you went that way, because there are some beautiful colors in it, Adrian, but I just seem to go black and white.
It's really interesting. Oddly for me, I didn't do that. But what I did do was I totally agree with you on the cropping. Okay. So I
Shall
actually
I stop
went,
and
go for it.
Yeah, great.
I decided to crop it too, but from my point of view, I thought the cropping. When I looked at the image, it had some really delicate textures in it, and some areas that I particularly liked. I loved this area in particular, and there's what looks like some reeds just in here. I didn't feel that this part of it was quite working as well as this section, so I ended up going in with a crop on a 1-to-1 basis, and I decided to go in quite tight. Yeah. And actually, I felt that area in here was really working nicely. And you're right about the black and white versus color, but I decided I liked the textures. It's very monotonal, even if it isn't black and white. I liked that. And then it was a case of, could we bring out maybe some of the textures in these areas a little more? And if I brought them out, would I make them harder or softer? Would I make it a little bit softer? And this up here is absolutely beautiful. I really like that. Yeah. And it was just so I think we both had that feeling about coming in closer to it. And I think you're right. It just had that look to me that as exactly where it'd end up, I don't know, but it just had that lovely feel to it. And then I started to open up. When you look at what's going on here, it's a bit unusual actually. This is a TIFF, I think, but there is some loss of image detail in here, which is a little odd for a TIFF. But so maybe it's been converted to a TIFF from something else. But there was a definite end point to the image which you couldn't go beyond, couldn't lift it too far. But this central area had lots of information. I just love the softness up here, and just giving a little bit extra softness was I thought that worked really nicely. Yeah, really like that.
I'm glad we both went in different directions, probably contrary to what we both might have thought we might have gone in.
It was nice.
I wonder actually with that shot whether it belonged to anything else, like a bit of a project or something. I don't know. Yeah. It felt to me like it might have a bit of legs in that direction. I'd really be interested in seeing that if it did, because it was funny, isn't it, how things just appeal to you because there's a bit of ambiguity or a bit of intrigue or a bit of something, and like you say, that lovely shape. Okay, but that was a nice image. Adrian, shall we do something completely different to what we've generally looked at, which has all been outdoors, landscapey things? There is an image that's come in from somebody in a studio environment.
Yes,
You know where I'm going.
I do know it.
Do you want to grab that and have a little play?
Yeah. Yes. So there was this one here from Andy. Yeah, great image. Look at the drama. Look at that. That fantastic. And now, whether or not Andy took this as a multiple shot, or whether it was just a one shot, unfortunately, the tops of these bits of whatever this is, dust, chalk, or whatever it is, has gone beyond the edge of the black background, which is a great shame. So when I saw this, I thought, typically I take it to Photoshop, see if we can improve on that background, and then bring it back to process in Lightroom. As people probably know, I'm a big Lightroom fan, and the non-destructive raw process is something I like to kind of keep it at non-destructive as possible for as long as possible. So I'll try and have a look in Photoshop and see first if we could somehow get rid of the side lights, and maybe we can just retain the top edges of those that sort of chalk. So that's what I'm going to have a go at doing here. So we'll bring it through to Photoshop, and then in Photoshop, so what to do? Well, one possibility is to use a technique of just coming in inboard of the nasty stuff, and yeah. So if I just where are we? So we're on a, first of all, let's just get ourselves to a ordinary layer, and then I can just nuke the bits we don't want. We don't want that. We don't want, definitely don't want the red can or whatever that is. And there's obviously a little bit of foreground here as well. Might be if I was taking a little bit more time, I would probably be a little bit more cautious of what I'm doing here, but for now. Okay, so I'm using 0 pixel feathers on there. So having done that, then I can pick up the this area, and if I'm very lucky, I'll be able to stick something in it that's not as ugly as those side lights. Now this actually, let's see. So this is content aware fill, and it should be looking at the areas nearby and doing some filling. Now, in fact, I'm not going to go back and do this again, but I needed to extend the selection. Oh, maybe I will just go back and do that again. So back to here, the selections, I'll just do, if I give it an extra bit of space to work with, and then we can do edit fill. Now there is, if you get stuck with the content aware stuff and it picks up areas that you don't want, then there's a more sophisticated one you can use that will get you out of that. But for now, let's just see if we can get the background a bit more neutral. And once we've done that, then we can address the lighting, because at the moment it's well and truly needs some help. So I'm just going to I'm just going to quit out of Photoshop just to give my computer something resource-wise back. So it does a pretty good job of filling in those gaps, which is a good starting point. And then let's see if we can work on the image. So it's a little bit like the snow image, really. It would be nice to have these white. And if we look at the histogram, we can see we're a long way from white. And if I pull out the whites, it's still not really where I need to be. So I could pull out the exposure, but if I pull out the exposure, it lightens everything. So it lightens the background, which you don't really want to do. If anything, I want to take the background down. So it needs a little bit of local adjustment. So I'm just going to put in some local adjustments, quite crudely again, because we're working fairly quickly. So we'll bring up the textures there. And then if I've got that one right, I can just pull it over here. Use it this side. And you start to see all the bits of powder and so on that have been thrown up, which is rather nice. And then maybe we can address that central area. And then the question is, can we take the rest of the image down? Well, I guess if we've now got local adjustments to work with, we can, because then we can just push these back up again. Bring highlights up, bring the lights up, and bring it all back out from the darkness. So I could use, I could probably use the brush or something that might have been quicker to, if I'm working on it harder, to just bring up these. Maybe I can use the exposure in the central section. And then perhaps I need to just darken down this foreground a little bit. Oops. The exposure in the foreground is really quite extreme, so it's quite difficult to get that to disappear. Okay. So with a bit more work, there's lots to be brought out here. There's some really interesting detail here, and the texture in the in here. And I think actually on the end we might even be able to. I've crudely used radial filters because it's a quick way to work, but there's plenty to be brought out there, as you can see. So we could do more work in detail in some of these areas and just pull extra out from that. So now you can't really do a proper before after, because the before after doesn't honor the cropping, and it doesn't honor the image beforehand. So I can just pick up these two and do a compare side by side. And so, it's heading in a direction. I think with some extra local adjustments, we can make something, really lovely out of that.
Nice job.
So yeah, I mean, I love Lightroom, but there's stuff that in the end, there's no resisting it. You've got to go to Photoshop, and there are certain things that Photoshop is absolutely amazing at, and that's the sort of thing. Yeah, very good. So,
it's a really cool image, and
it's a great image, isn't it?
I can imagine
Fantastic.
They had a lot of fun, albeit a lot of mess.
Yeah.
Shooting those.
Yeah. Oh, could you just do that again for me?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to fire. I think we did want to do something different, because obviously we generally work in outdoor landscape scenarios, but there's other stuff going on, and we're quite happy to cover it. Adrian, a quick question, and I'm not sure we can explain it. But the question was from Ralph. Is it possible to explain the loss of lift in a TIFF? Would PSD be better? I think they're referring back to that file where you said it didn't seem to go anywhere, but we don't think that was a TIFF related thing, do we?
No, I think the TIFF file is capable of holding, full 16-bit across all the colors. It inherently has the capability of holding as much as a conventional RAW file. It is no different, but I think for some reason that image had been compromised somewhere along the way before it arrived as a TIFF file. So I think there may be something had happened to it prior to us getting it. The shadows were not conventionally just blocked up; they were damaged in areas. So it looked like it might have been edited in a smaller space before it ended up as a TIFF. That was my feeling anyway. But who knows? Perhaps Richard will be able to let us know what the history of that file is. That would be quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it didn't matter too much, that image. It just meant that we couldn't take it. I couldn't lift the shadows too far in that area because it brought out a rather horrible artifact, which it didn't feel like a raw artifact.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, Ralph, for joining us as always, which is much appreciated, and B, for the question. And if there are any questions, like I say, hit them on the comments. I'll try and grab them. Adrian, do you mind if I have a little go? There's a bit of a flower one here, which I think I might just want to have a quick look at, because I think it could go in lots of directions. And then in the inevitable crash in 5 seconds, I'll throw back to you. There was a couple of things I wanted to say about this, because obviously it appears it's sort of an ICM, so someone's probably moved the cameras to try and get a slightly different sort of creative bent on this scene. I think what they've had to do, looking at the tech, is this was shot at f40. So I think they will have been, yeah,
f40.
That's got to be a fake F. What the F? I think they must have been probably without a neutral density filter or a polarizer or something else that could have slowed it down for them, and they've had to go to the very, very smallest aperture they could get to try and buy themselves some time to do this movement where you need obviously around half a second, whatever it might be. Now the reason why I bring that up is because when you shoot at those very small apertures, you will find tons and tons of bits, stuff that's on your filter, stuff that's on your lens. If you're shooting in those very small apertures, you're going to have spots everywhere. And now this is a JPEG, so it isn't massively big. So I'm wondering if they shot it JPEG straight out of the camera and it's come smaller to us. But you can see, and I'm not going to go into this, but you can see straight away there's a lot of spots. Now, I don't think they really need, well, I don't think they're supposed to be there. Let's just say that. But it's a effect of shooting at those small apertures. So the other time it happens sometimes is if it's a little bit of rain and you're shooting into the rain a little bit, but you still want to take that shot looking in that direction. Yeah. I find a neat little thing is just to open up your aperture as much as you can get away with, because those spots are going to be a little less obvious, let's say, and easier to take out. So I don't want to take them out, but I just wanted to explain they're there, and I'm definitely not going to take them out because there's about 3 billion. So I think just with this, it feels a bit, for me, I think potentially I would go down a sort of more vibrant, colorful kind of route. We've got flowers, we understand what they're like.
Go for it.
It feels like it can just take a big lump up on the exposure, probably a stopper.
Yeah, so, it needs that. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And that histogram, then we just stretch that out a little bit. And then I think I would even just warm it up. We're on a JPEG, so again, these are going to feel a bit cruder ways of dealing with it than if we were using the raw file or whatever it might have been. And I wouldn't be afraid, to be honest, of really just punching up those colors, and you could actually start going in and doing individual hue and saturation adjustments there. So that might be worth a little play. But the other thing I was just looking for was just a little vignette, just to bring us in there. And I think with these whites and with the JPEG, it feels like these are getting a bit hot, so to speak. We're losing detail there, even though he says we've got it all, but it's a bit like Adrian was saying with that shadow data in the one earlier, it was starting to get crunchy, even though it was still there. But I think had we had the actual raw, I always find it's a balance, isn't it? A bit like your snow earlier, Adrian. You want to leave, you're tempted to go, I know this was pure white, it was very white while I was there, but we still kind of need to see sometimes that texture in the leaf. So that would be something I would be aware of. I wonder, but maybe I'll throw this to you, Adrian, see what you think. I wonder if this right-hand side is actually helping us at all. So, I mean, part of me wants to just crop it there, but...
Yeah. And I think I spun it around as well. I think it felt like it was the wrong orientation for me. So I played with rotating it, and it felt better in another orientation. I can't remember where I ended up with it now.
Okay. Did you go a similar way with the color, or just out of interest, did you take it that different direction?
I can't remember now. I think I looked at maybe adding to the blurriness, looking at going some negative texture, negative clarity, but it's already a fairly artistic interpretation. So I thought kind of went that way. And then, yes, I think I did indeed include the increased saturation somewhat. Yeah, absolutely. I think that works.
I think if we sometimes, especially with warmth, it's only when you have worked a little bit on introducing that or even cooling it down, but that you look back at the original and you feel just how cold that is. And you often don't see that until you've gone away from it. And I would argue that's maybe a more vibrant interpretation that was probably, and it's not always the way that we want to take it that way, but I'd say it's probably a lot closer to the colors, which probably made you stop and feel like there was something to play with there. So that was just a little one, but a nice image. I like the way that was going. But F40, man, I do
Mm.
share your pain. I've been in those situations where I don't have my filters and you're just desperate to find a solution. But
Yeah.
F40 is
Well,
maybe
it looks like
slightly.
it's a macro lens, doesn't it? So it's a 90mm Nikon 90mm, which probably explains why you've got an F40 on the barrel. Goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, a nice image, a good
Yeah. Very
image.
good. Very good.
Now, quick questions. Just stop the share for a sec
Yeah.
for me. Well, like
Mhm.
Andrew. Oh, Andrew's watching. Fab. So Andrew is the chap who shot the powder and the dancer. So he can confirm it was fun, but absolutely right. The cleanup was epic and far less. Um, and then Anita Lewis. Anita, I may have to look at this. So Anita says, I have loads of images that look like the second one on the film strip. Dark foreground, but sky
Right.
okay. I'd be interested to
Yeah.
see how you would deal with it. Adrian, do you want to have a little pickup of that then?
Yeah. Let's go for that. Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Anita.
Okie dokie. So this one here. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, the shot has been taken without a gradient on the camera, so the sky is nicely exposed. Actually, it's it's done well. It's right up the end of the histogram, so the whites are white. It's not clipped, but the result is the foreground is very dark. So, and I guess you can go a couple of different ways with this. Ultimately, you've got a bright sky and a dark foreground. So, how might you fix that? Well, the problem also is that you've not just got a flat horizon. It's not like a seascape, but you've got a great big tree in the way as well. So it's going to take a couple of things to deal with it. And I might have a think about this if I were spending a bit more time as to the best way. But one potential is to lift the foreground first, and then go have a look at the tree and see if that can be also relieved a bit from its shadowy pain. Either by a direct injection of light this way or some lifting of shadows. That's actually worked reasonably well. I think then I would be interested in whether or not we needed to do anything more with the clouds. I might be tempted to take a look at some enhancement of that cloud texture. I rather like those clouds. So a little bit of extra contrast in the sky might not go amiss. And then there may be a few other little remedial jobs that are needed if they just miss the global adjustments or the more generalized adjustments. So bringing the shadows out in these areas. What's interesting is the way that your eyes see this world. When you're looking at it, you see it like that. You don't see it like the way the camera captures it. It's just amazing the way that the brain and the eyes work together to give a dynamic range, which is considerably different to what the camera can capture. Then I think I would be looking at this bush on the side and saying, it's really in the way. Do I, is this a candidate for doing something with, I don't know, not quite this crudely, of course, but, it might be that taking out some of this is something we might want to do. Definitely not that crudely. But we could go in and we could heal away or take away or cut off or remove the edge, maybe clip it, maybe crop it. But yeah, just as a general adjustment then, you either keep the sky where it is and just lift the darker foreground, or you could take a different route. You could darken the sky and then generally lift the overall exposure of the whole image. So it just depends which is easier to deal with. Sometimes the one is much easier to deal with than the other.
Adrian, can you just show us the before and after?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So quite a difference. Yeah. So so that's and in the field when you're putting a graduate filter on, of course, then that gradient filter is a straight line. So when you bring it back, you're going to have a dark tree, and you're going to have to manage that dark tree in post-processing. So the tree here is going to be the top of it's going to be dark because we've darkened the sky down to match the foreground. So you're going to need to go in there and tackle that. And I've gone in with my radial filter here just to lift that. Could lift the shadows perhaps as well. Might work too. But actually, it's a bush of two halves. And I think that initial part here, I might need to put in a separate one just to catch the back, the tree in the back here, and just to lift that independently, just to get those to look perhaps a little bit more in keeping with how they may have been on the day, just to get a little bit more out of that. So yeah, whichever way you do it, whether you do it in camera or you do it afterwards in post-processing, you've got a problem to solve, and then it's just working out which is the easiest way to solve it.
Mm. Hopefully that can show everybody that there's an awful lot there, um, to go
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
and
Yeah, I
so.
mean, you're quite right, Sam. The idea that the image has, the natural data that the camera captures, the raw data is enormous. So there's loads of detail here. You don't have to worry about lifting this up and exposing just a noisy foreground. That isn't going to happen if you're shooting raw. You've got plenty of latitude. I mean, generally, the thing to do is to make sure we don't blow out the highlights in the important parts, such as the sky. And this person hasn't done that. They've captured that perfectly. So I think they had an eye on that. They made a good exposure. They kept the brightest part of the sky at the far right of the histogram. Excellent, perfect. And then it's just a case of then recovering the areas that are darker. Yeah, it was very good, very nice.
Nice. Good
Excellent.
demo there, Adrian. Hopefully that helps Anita. And I think Jez is with us. That was one of Jez's shots.
Oh, good.
Okay, and he was talking about auto tone in Lightroom. Actually, there's a point, Adrian.
Yeah, good point. Right, let's go and have a look and see what autotone does with it. Autotone is a blunt instrument. So if we bring this back to the beginning, so if I just reset that, if I press autotone without even pressing it, I know what it's going to do. It's going to raise the shadows and drop the highlights and fiddle about a bit with exposure. There you go. Raise the shadows, drops the highlights, fiddles about a bit with exposure. So its approach is quite algorithmic. It's quite predictable, and it isn't necessarily the best way to go. You can push the shadows hard, and you will start to get the image coming up. But what happens is it has a kind of HDR look to it. It loses contrast in these lighter areas that it's pulled out of the shadows. They go a bit flat because of the way that the histogram gets manipulated. Personally, I don't like that approach. Actually, it's blown out the sky really as well, even though it doesn't show it. That big spike there is the problem. There's a lot of pixels of the same brightness value. And by pulling the highlights down, sometimes that helps you, sometimes it causes a problem elsewhere in the image. So I wouldn't go that route. But if you've got 100 pictures and you need to do something quick, the auto tone button is a lifesaver. So if you're in a rush, the auto tone can get you an okay shot quickly, but there's no reason to use it really. I think we have the tools around us to do probably a better job with
it. Good, thank you, Adrian. And Anita says, thanks, that's interesting. I usually lift the shadows, but I can see you can get a more targeted impact by using the grads and the control points. And she likes the image, so well done, everybody, on that. We've probably got time for potentially one more. There's one I had in mind,
but want to do a wacky one or
yeah.
I'll tell you what, let me just quickly correct. Are we still sharing mine? Yeah, we are, aren't we?
Yeah.
Just very quickly, on an image like this, one thing that's quite fun to do. Now you can do this in a couple of different tools with different ways, but when I looked at this, I saw this and I thought, oh, this would be quite fun to quickly have a go with tilt shift. So, and because there happens to be one built into this bit of software, I thought this image was rather good for that. So the idea of bringing the focus to a part of the image and using that kind of tilt shift look, this kind of image really, looking down a tunnel at an object, this is rather nice. I quite like that effect. You can do that in Photoshop, and in this case, I've used the Nik perspective control tool, but they're all the same. They all do the same thing. Okay. So yeah, whilst there are lots of other avenues to explore on the image with black and white, etc., I just thought that was quite a fun. When we're looking at a creative interpretation, that would be quite a nice, fun, creative way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely, nice one. Thanks for throwing that in. I know some people use that on the phone quite a lot, don't they? And I know you do the mobile phone workshops with Paul as well.
Yeah.
Actually, then, just as an interesting question, Adrian, and then we might pick one more to finish. Do you find people are more prepared to take edits in a slightly more bolder direction when they're on their phone?
I guess that's true, possibly because the apps are there right in front of you, so that it's very easy to just go or press the little miniature world thing and see what that does and so on. And it's great fun, but actually the phone is a well, I wouldn't say much underrated, because it's not these days. It's
Mm.
actually heavily rated now as a professional photography tool. It produces fantastic images, takes raw images, does auto bracketing. So it's now it's a camera in its own right. But I guess because you've got those apps which have never really made it to traditional cameras, maybe if they appeared on cameras more, people might do more of that stuff on their cameras. I think that just puts you in a slightly different frame of mind. And I think you just kind of, you look at the camera as something that's not quite such a serious tool, but I think that's the wrong way to look at it. It's in your pocket, pop it out, you can take some great pictures with it, do all your slow shutter stuff with it, long exposures on a tripod with it. It's a traditional camera, but in a completely non-traditional format. And the way that it does, if you look at things like the portrait modes that you get with iPhone and with other makes of camera, where it uses artificial intelligence to work out, using multiple cameras, the depth in the image, and then it simulates depth of field effect for wide aperture lenses. That's a very clever use of technology to overcome the lens problems you might otherwise have to try and simulate that effect. So there's only more of that to come. Computational imaging is coming at us all the time, and that will ultimately cause our next camera purchase decision to be harder and harder.
Mm. Yes, well, there we go. We went totally off piece there, but it's all very relevant. Okay, I'm gonna just, because there's a little quick one I want to quickly have a look at. So let me just grab that back. And we're passing the baton beautifully tonight, Adrian. Actually, before interesting. We got a couple of images which came in, and I just thought the only thing I would do here is Control P print. Now I'm being a little bit cheeky, but
no, I think you're spot on. This is one from Phil, I think. So thanks for sending this in, Phil. I looked at that too, and I thought, well, I'm just going to make it worse. And I proceeded to do just that. I messed about with it. I think about the only thing I thought might help it a little bit was just raising the shadow in that ridgeway in close in, just to lift a little bit. But honestly, you're absolutely right. It's a beautiful light, lovely location, of course. Pretty tricky to say do something wacky with it. I think that would be inappropriate. It's a great picture. Well done.
Yeah. So sometimes restraint is an awesome thing to have if it's already there. And actually, this is another example of something that we could think about these and all the rest of it, but I actually wouldn't do a huge amount. So I don't. They're great shots, and thank you everyone for sending them in. I will pick one that I will do. Go on,
you pick one, and I'll squeeze one in at the end if you can.
Yeah, cool. I'll be nice and quick. Don't worry.
Go on then.
And I think I would imagine this. There's lots of nice things about this shot, and I can imagine the type of weather and the type of scene and why it would have appealed to take an image. When we get these grey, blue, inky skies, and we had some of this today actually, especially with water underneath, and you get the different turquoises and things in the water, it can be a really cool thing to play with. I think where I'm going to take it might lose some of that, but might bring something different in. So, and I know obviously using the person is a nice thing from a sense of scale, but I may or may not leave that person in there. I just thought it'd be interesting to play with really pushing it up a little and taking it a bit more high key. So just introducing a lot more exposure, ditching some saturation, and actually just picking out a very kind of a very kind of
nice
minimalist square. And actually I'm really scared to do this because every time I use the grad filter it crashes Lightroom, so I'm going to just do a horrible job of it with the brush. But I would even lighten up this sky, and I'd be trying to get even a bit more brightness in there. There's various ways of doing it, and this is an extremely ugly way of doing it. But when I see those sorts of colors, I think actually sometimes coming right back off it and pushing it right up to be quite a bright sort of image, it can be something that we just sort of drift away into. And I know that isn't necessarily what caught the person's eye, in that I think the drama of it, of the sky, and you could definitely do an edit where you brought even more of that drama in. And that's in a way why I wanted to just totally take it a different way
Yeah,
for us
that's lovely. I
to
really
think
like
about
that.
it.
Mm, mm. That's yeah,
So
and I wouldn't have gone that way at all. That's
exactly.
really lovely. Yeah.
So just that's
Mm,
it. I mean, it's quite interesting to see, and we try and make sure we throw some things at it differently
mm.
each
Yeah,
time from
lovely.
each of us. But I've given you a few minutes there, Adrian, mate. If you want to
Oh,
grab
yeah.
one just to finish, so let me
Okay.
stop my
Yep.
share.
We can share that. So now you've put me off. Now I was wondering about going somewhere else, but I might invade your patch here
Go
and
on,
do
do
something.
it. No, it's good. That's the whole
I
point.
might really regret this because I haven't actually played with this image at all. So a sky like that, when I see a sky like that, I'm in my element. This is just lovely. Now, looks like the crop is not quite there, but all I like to do is just to see what's in there and go in and just see what's there. And that sky and that cloud, look at the fingers in that cloud. Look at these little bits here. They are absolutely screaming out. So yeah, so I would be interested to work on the image with that in mind, and then bringing out the extremes in the image. I do like that, and then probably in this area here, maybe it needs something to be lighter. So bringing this area out a little bit. Now I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but it's just when I see those clouds definitely want to beckon me in to play with and go a little bit further. But I can see there's a set of wind
Oh, wind
turbines out
farm.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Wind farm out there. And so when you get rain on the horizon as well, you get this lovely kind of grey texture, which you can usually pull out the texture with either with clarity and dehaze. Just pull out the rain out there. So that was a lousy job. Where I was really going was here. This one I caught my eye. Now I've never been and seen this thing. Is it Sainsbury's at the Bull Ring?
Oh, I don't know. It's in Birmingham, isn't it?
It is.
Where's
I did
Verity
rather
when you
like
need her?
Verity, exactly. She needs to be here, and then she could fill us in on that. But it just screaming out to have these brought out, and because all the pictures I've seen at least show these as beautifully reflective surfaces. So I think that one is, and there's something fun going on in the sky here, including some dust spots by the looks of that. A few of those coming out there, but yeah, I did rather like the look of this one, so I did think that one would be nice because that if we look at the grid, yeah, the before after, which we can't do with the crop, so you can't see with and without the crop, unfortunately. So yeah, so that's that I thought was rather nice. So it just needed a little bit of trimming back, really, because the bit in the side, okay, it's an initial shot, so that's probably what the person had in mind. Just get rid of the cloud in the side and just lighten up these. And there's a lot more you can do with this. So there's no room in the overall general histogram because it will clip, but by going in and locally playing with these areas, we can definitely lift that part of it. I thought that was rather nice, that one.
Yeah, there's definite potential there, wasn't there? Selfridges, Adrian, Selfridges, the Bull Ring, Selfridges.
Yes, Selfridges,
Thank you,
right.
everyone,
Very good.
for taking that in.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. A couple of people wouldn't have gone the way I went with the square. I think they mean that in an interesting way, not "What are you doing, Sam?" But they may mean that. I mean, who knows?
With this, right. Okay.
Sorry, with the last one that we did, the
Okay.
beach one. So yeah, it was interesting. Both of us took it two totally different ways.
Yeah.
Adrian's got another one here with he can't stop the man. He's flying through them.
This was great though. It just caught my eye, and this is really nice, isn't it? And that sky, look at that sky. Yeah. So now so it probably just needs a little bit taken off the top, doesn't it? Just to take that down. Yeah, these clouds, aren't they amazing? And we have the tools to deal with this, which is what's so nice about it. That that's what I love about Lightroom. Just with that Lightroom, you can just touch it and play with it, and just really have fun with it. I just think that's lovely.
Look at that. That was super quick, but a nice job on that.
Excellent.
Adrian, may I just grab back, because I've just got one thing to show for next week. And firstly, big thanks to Adrian. I think we all know he does the majority of the hard work on these evenings. So I always like doing stuff with you, Adrian, and I think it works nicely because often we do think in different directions. So that hopefully gives everybody as much of our kind of creative juices as we can possibly do. So big thanks to you, and I'm sure from everyone watching. Next week, we are doing a virtual tour with myself and Mr. Sanders, your friend and mine, and we're going to Romania. And I think Paul will say, and I'm going to say it for him, this is his favorite location of the tours that he's been doing for Light and Land. He really loves it. He really loves the place, the people. And so we're going to have some nice, obviously Paul kind of vibe, but there's some people, there's some agricultural, there's some landscape, there's a bit of everything. So that'll be next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. I will get the stream sorted next time and it will come up as usual. Tonight was just a time issue. We did not have time to preload the post. We had to just literally go live for various reasons, but that will be showing up, and keep up with the Facebook posts, the Light and Land newsletter to see all of that. From everyone else, thank you. And yes, they're saying interesting that we do see it in different ways. It is indeed. Hopefully you like these. If you do, please drop us a comment, let us know. As I say, hit the like, and even better if you hit the share. That is really fab. Just get the word out there. I don't think there's anything else I want to say other than if we will come back, Adrian, if you're happy to.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, maybe we can persuade someone else to join us next time.
I've got someone in mind.
Ah.
So we might have a 3-way next time, which would be really good because that'll add a third dimension. And
that would be brilliant.
What we do need, though, is we need you guys to send in some, preferably your raw files. So as much of the originals as you possibly can give us is what we're really after, because that allows us the latitude to play with them a little bit more, bigger files. Exactly. So keep your eye on that. We'll put the posts up. There's a Dropbox link. It's super simple. You just drop them in there and we'll pick them up. And for everyone who has already done it, thank you. We may not have got yours yet, but there are more. We know they're in the background and we'll pick them out as we go. But I think we're done. Thank you everyone for the kind comments, and we shall see you soon. And from myself and Adrian,
thank you Sam for hosting.
Good night. Cheerio.
Yeah. All right, bye-bye.